Welcome back. Do liberals instinctively make excuses for Muslim extremists? My next guest says so, and he's a liberal. Quote, unless liberals realize that there are tens of millions of people in the Muslim world who are far scarier than Dick Cheney, he wrote recently in the LA Times, they will be unable to protect civilization from its genuine enemies. The man who wrote that is Sam Harris. He's the author of The End of Faith and A Letter to a Christian Nation. He joins us from New York. Sam, welcome. What exactly, give us your thesis in one sentence here.
Well, I'm arguing against dogmatism, really, and there is a liberal dogma which suggests that if the poor people of the world were simply treated well and given enough economic opportunity, they can be guaranteed to be reasonable and tolerant. And that's clearly not true. We are facing in Islam a kind of death cult. This is not to say that we're at war with all Muslims, but we are absolutely at war with Muslims who think that cartoonists should be beheaded for drawing cartoons, or who think women should be stoned to death for adultery, or who think that converting away from the faith is a capital offense. And so we have to recognize that it is possible to be well educated and to have economic opportunity and to think you're going to get 72 virgins in paradise, as witnessed by the fact that the 19 guys who flew planes into our buildings all had college degrees, and many of them had PhDs.
That's exactly right. And you don't see a lot of terrorists coming out of Burkina Faso, right? Or, the poorest places in the world are actually not spawning terrorism. It's Western Europe.
No, and there are a variety of studies that back that up, that show that support for suicide bombing, for instance, actually goes up as you correct for literacy and education and economic opportunity.
I completely believe that, absolutely. No. But back to the West and our reaction to this and this weird masochism at the center of our society, it seems to me. Why is it, for instance, when cartoonists in Western Europe are threatened with beheading, that some in our country, and I have to say they tend to be liberal, seem to make excuses for the people threatening violence against the cartoonists, or the people threatening violence against the Pope, or the people who are basically against free speech? Why are liberals in this country seem to be on their side? I don't get that at all.
Well, it's interesting. I think liberals, almost by definition, don't know what it's like to really believe in God. They don't know what it's like to be sure that the book they keep by their bedside is the literal word of the creator of the universe, and that death is merely a passage to an eternity of happiness. And so they find it very difficult to believe that anyone actually believes this stuff and is motivated by the content of their religious beliefs. And so liberals, when they see the jihadist look into the video camera and say things like, "We love death more than the infidels love life," and then he blows himself up, it's the liberal in our society, the religious moderate or the secularist, who is left thinking that's just propaganda, that's not really why he blew himself up, whereas our own religious lunatics, quite frankly, are in a better position to understand that people really do believe these things.
The irony for me it has always been that, if the jihadists ever took power in this country, the first people who would be rounded up and executed, probably slowly, would be liberals, would be secularists, would be gays, would be the very same people who are always making excuses for radical Islam. It seems like almost like masochism to me, or self-hatred or something.
Well, it is. I think there's this idea that Western power is at its roots malevolent.
Yes.
And it is not serving us at the moment, because what we need, because the irony is that the liberals of the world, the secularists, should be in the best position to see how divisive religious dogmatism is, how our world has been shattered unnecessarily by these competing religious certainties for which there really is no evidence. I know you and I differ on some of these questions, but liberals should be in a position to call a spade and show that people really are dying for God. And they're, in many respects, the least able to do this.
Yeah, and we need them, frankly. There are a lot of very smart, thoughtful, articulate liberals out there who I think we need in the war on terror. Let me read you something you wrote I thought was very provocative. There's every reason to believe that a terrifying number of the world's Muslims now view all political and moral questions in terms of their affiliation with Islam. This leads them to rally to the cause of other Muslims, no matter how sociopathic their behavior. The point here is that you're making, it's not just a small percentage of people who've gone crazy, it's a large number of Muslims around the world who are sympathetic to these acts of craziness. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we quite frankly don't know what percentage it is, but there's every reason to believe that it's a percentage that, were we to learn it, would terrify us. It's not 1%, it's not 0.5%. Even if it were only 1%, you're talking about 14 million people, and I'm sure it's an order of magnitude or more beyond that. And that is troubling, because this religious solidarity, this reflexive identification with a religion, no matter how ill-behaved its adherents, that is really running the possibility of a global civilization into the ditch, because we have to be identified as human beings first. We can't be Christians against Muslims against Jews.
Amen. Amen. Sam Harris. I disagree with a lot of things you say, but I think you're a very brave man and very smart.
Thank you for having me on.